Hello and welcome to the Gridiron Week 4 Waiver Wire Report. And after another cracking Sunday of football where all the big games kind of lived up to it and the NFC continued to be an absolute point machine left, right and centre. I'm sure you all had a wonderful fantasy weekend, unlike myself, Gavin. I don't know what, Pete Rogers, did you have a good fantasy weekend?
It was all right. I played a lot of DFS, and I made the mistake of looking at who the number one lineups were in the pools that I played in. And you never do that. Because it's never encouraging to see some guy randomly decide that Rex Burkhead was the man to play this week.
Well, look, this is we're still early enough in the season that even if you're 0-3 at this point and you find yourself right at the top of the waiver wire, you can still claw this back. You can still win your league, and it's important that you know exactly who to go and pick up from the waiver wire. So as always, we'll give you our top 5 picks. Before we get to our 5, was there anyone, Pete, that you guys at Fake Teams that you're thinking are just on the outskirts there that maybe you're either avoiding or maybe you think could be a deeper league player or anything like that?
Yeah, after what we saw Sunday night against the Saints, Allen Lazard certainly deserves a lot of waiver wire attention. He had a huge game, catching 6 balls for 146 yards and a touchdown. My only hesitation there is just that was without Davante Adams. When Davante Adams comes back, he's obviously going to be the guy, and that's going to cap what Allen Lazard's ceiling is. That being said, Lazard has looked great. He has cemented himself as a trusted guy in Rodgers' community. So, like you said, in deeper leagues, certainly worth rostering, Allen Lazard right now.
So let's get into our 5. 3 running backs, 2 wide receivers this week. A couple of rookies at that as well. Coming in at 5, a man who's moved around the league a bit over recent years, has found himself now up in the Pacific Northwest. Carlos Hyde of the Seattle Seahawks. Why do we think that he's a man worth taking a look at?
Yeah, this really just comes down to the health of Chris Carson. He got rolled up on against the Cowboys and it tweaked his knee. The Seahawks as a team aren't reporting that it's anything major, but if it does keep him out for 1 to 2 or however many weeks, Carlos Hyde is 100% the guy to go get. Last year, he is a good running back. He had a 1,000-yard season last year for the Texans, and now would walk into a huge role as the running back for the Seattle Seahawks. We know Pete Carroll loves to run the football. We're letting Russ cook, obviously, but they're going to have a running game, and Carlos Hyde is going to be the man in that game if Chris Carson misses any time.
Now, here's a fun one in at 4, because I scoffed at picking up this player despite being in a league where I had no less than 4 starters out and I had to play a tight end in the flex. I looked at it and I went, it's still not worth picking up Rex Burkhead, and it burnt me horrifically.
It's hard to want to buy into the Patriots backfield just because you never know. You never know who's going to be the guy any given week. That being said, it's hard to ignore the fact that Burkhead caught 7 balls for 49 yards and a touchdown, as well as rushing 6 times for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns. So a 3-touchdown game can't be ignored. With James White taking personal time, obviously, Burkhead has kind of cemented himself as that pass-catching back and has seen still plenty of touches in the running game. The Patriots offense is all built around the run with Cam Newton. They're going to move through that whole stable of running backs, but Burkhead seems to have a reliable role. And if he's the guy any given week, you need to roster him, and he might be a matchup play, but he's someone who you have to have on your roster, at least now going forward.
In at 3 is a rookie wide receiver who a lot of people questioned whether he was going to be able to step into the role of a rookie from last season who's injured. And then he went and scored basically an identikit touchdown to one that rookie scored about 4 times last season. We are talking, of course, about first-round pick Brandon Aruk of the San Francisco 49ers.
We've spent plenty of time on this show talking about the 49ers offense in the past just because they have dealt with so many injuries. And so you want whomever is healthy and catching balls. And Ayuk, this was one of the first times that we saw him healthy this year. And when we saw what Kyle Shanahan has in store for him. And it's, like you said, exactly how they use Deebo Samuel. He caught 5 of his 8 targets for 70 yards and also carried the ball 3 times for 31 yards and a touchdown. So for PPR leagues, Ayuk is getting that running work. He's getting the passing work. And as basically the only healthy pass catcher out there right now, he's going to see the majority of work there. So he is someone who you should be adding to your roster and trusting that he's not going to only give you production now, but as a rookie, first-round draft pick, he's going to be giving you production throughout the season.
And look, as part of this, not only are there a lot of injuries in San Francisco, but coming up, they've got the Eagles, who, don't tell anyone, are pretty bad right now, and the Miami Dolphins. So two teams who you can score fantasy points on. And with that in mind, let's stay on the West Coast. Let's stay in Silicon Valley and go with Jeff Wilson Jr., who was a role player last year, kick returner, but with, again, the injuries they've got in San Francisco, he got a lot of carries yesterday.
Yeah, we saw him get some goal line work in random weeks last year, and this week was no different. Jerick McKinnon, who was the popular guy last week, he still had a good game. He had 14 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, as well as 3 catches for 39. But Wilson took the cake, 12 yards, 12 carries on 15 yards, and a touchdown. Plus, he added 3 catches for 54 yards and another score. With this backfield, with Raheem Mostert missing time, with Tevin Coleman now on IR, Kyle Shanahan wants to use multiple running backs. We know the 49ers offense can always run the football, so you should be rostering any running back that could possibly see the field under Kyle Shanahan's system. And so Jeff Wilson is the most available one right now, and that will change very quickly. So you should make sure he's rostered on your team.
Then our number one guy, and a guy who I absolutely loved coming out of LSU last year, and a lot of people questioned whether it was system production, and then he absolutely flashed at the combine earlier this year, maybe having the best performance of any wide receiver. It moved him into the first round, and then finally the Vikings play well, and it turns out that he's a big part of that.
Yeah, don't you love the fact that the best wide receiver in college, Justin Jefferson, came out and was a really good wide receiver in the NFL? I mean, shocking. Who could have seen that coming? It took a little bit of time, but we saw him. This was his huge breakout. He caught 7 of his 9 targets, 175 yards, and a touchdown. He is 100% top guy on this list, a must add. We know that the Vikings are looking for that complement to run with Adam Thielen. This team looks like it's going to be, every game is going to be a shootout with them because their defense just can't keep anyone under control. So that's going to be a ton of passing work, which is what you want. And the fact that they play the Texans, the Seahawks, and the Falcons next, which are all secondaries who have given up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers to start this season, like that is a beautiful, beautiful segment of teams to be getting right now. Justin Jefferson, this is the last time you're going to be able to roster him. Go get him right now and just benefit from his talent and just the role that he's going to be in Minnesota.
Pete, it's a pleasure as always. I know you do a top 10 list every week for people who do want a bit of a deeper dive with the guys at Fake Teams. So tell people where they can find more of your work.
Yeah, so I do top 10 list, waiver wire ads, faketeams.com. You can go check that out. Also follow me on Twitter at Pete M. Rogers. Always talking fantasy football there.
Keep an eye out for our weekly podcast as well with Coach Brian Billick, with Kalen Kaler, myself, Simon and Matthew, as always, breaking down the big storylines going into week 4 here on the YouTube channel, or you can subscribe to The Gridiron Show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching. This has been The Gridiron Waiver Wire Report.